Look at your hand right now. You think you're seeing it. You're not. What's actually happening is your brain is receiving a stream of electrical signals, making its best guess at what's out there, and projecting an image so convincing you've never once questioned it. The color of that hand, the depth, the texture, none of it exists the way you think it does. Your entire experience of reality, every object, every face, every sunset you've ever called beautiful, is a controlled hallucination. And the terrifying part is, it's working exactly as designed. Here's what nobody tells you about your eyes. They're not cameras. They don't capture the world and send it to your brain like footage from a security system. What they actually do is far stranger. Your eyes collect raw light signals, wavelengths bouncing off surfaces, and fire those signals down the optic nerve as electrical pulses. That's it. That's all they do. The image, the color, the depth, the sense that you're looking at a real solid three-dimensional world. None of that comes from your eyes. All of that is built by your brain. Assembled, constructed, and in many cases, completely invented. Think about that for a second. Your brain doesn't wait for information to arrive before deciding what you're seeing. It predicts first. It runs a model of what the world probably looks like based on everything you've ever seen before, and it projects that model forward, filling in gaps before your eyes even confirm them. The actual sensory input, the raw data from your eyes, arrives late. Your perception is already assembled before the evidence gets there. Neuroscientists call this predictive coding, and it isn't a quirk or a flaw. It's the core architecture of how your brain processes everything. You're not experiencing the world. You are experiencing your brain's best guess at the world. Updated constantly, corrected when the guess is wrong, but always a guess. And here's where it gets uncomfortable. The guess is wrong more often than you think. In the 1970s, a British neurologist named Richard Gregory spent years studying patients who had recovered from blindness. People who had been sightless since birth or early childhood and had surgery that restored their vision as adults. What he found should have been front-page news. These patients, who now had fully functioning eyes, couldn't see. Not really. They could detect light and movement, but they couldn't recognize a face. Couldn't tell a cube from a sphere just by looking. One patient, a man in his 50s, could identify a lathe in his workshop only by closing his eyes and running his hands over it. The moment he touched it, he understood it. The moment he opened his eyes and looked at it, he was lost again. His eyes were working perfectly. His brain didn't know what to do with the information. Because seeing, it turns out, is a learned skill. You spent the first years of your life training your brain to interpret visual signals, to associate certain patterns of light with objects, depth, edges, faces. You don't remember doing this, but your brain does. Every time you look at something now, it isn't detecting the object. It's matching what it sees against a vast internal library built from a lifetime of experience. When a match is found, your brain fills in the rest automatically. Most of what you think you're seeing in any given moment is memory, not light. But it goes deeper than that. Your brain doesn't just fill in what objects look like. It decides what you're allowed to notice at all. In the late 1990s, psychologists Daniel Simons and Christopher Chabris ran what became one of the most replicated experiments in the history of psychology. They showed people a short video of two teams passing a basketball and asked them to count how many times the white team passed the ball. Simple enough. Halfway through the video, a person in a gorilla suit walked directly through the middle of the scene, faced the camera, thumped its chest, and walked off. It was on screen for 9 full seconds. About half the people watching never saw it. Not because they weren't looking. They were staring directly at the screen. But their brain had a task: count the passes, and anything outside that task was filtered out before it ever reached conscious awareness. The gorilla wasn't hidden. Their attention was. Simons and Chabris called it inattentional blindness. But what it actually demonstrated was something more profound. Your brain is not showing you reality. It is showing you a curated version of reality, selected and edited in real time based on what it thinks matters. Everything else, including a full-grown gorilla beating its chest in front of you, simply doesn't make the cut. And the editing doesn't stop there. Color isn't real. Not in the way you think. The world is not colored. Objects don't have color the way they have mass or weight. What objects have is the ability to absorb certain wavelengths of light and reflect others. Your eye catches those reflected wavelengths, fires signals to your brain, and your brain assigns a color experience, a qualia, to that signal. The redness of red doesn't exist in the apple. It exists in you, in your brain's interpretation of a wavelength bouncing off a surface. Which means two people looking at the same apple may be having a genuinely different color experience and have absolutely no way of knowing it. This isn't philosophy. This is neuroscience. The proof has been sitting in the research for decades. In 2015, a photograph of a dress tore the internet apart. Some people saw it as white and gold. Others saw it as black and blue. Both groups were looking at the same pixels on the same screen. What differed was the assumption their brains made about the lighting in the scene. Depending on whether your brain assumed the dress was in shadow or in direct light, it corrected the colors differently. Same image. Two completely different realities. Neither group was wrong. Both were hallucinating. Now here is the part that changes everything. Your brain is not doing this to deceive you. It's doing it to protect you. Raw, unfiltered sensory data, the actual flood of signals pouring into your nervous system every second, is too vast and too chaotic to process consciously. You receive somewhere in the range of 11 million bits of information per second through your senses. Your conscious mind handles roughly 40. If your brain showed you everything, every photon, every frequency, every edge and shadow and flicker of movement, you would be paralyzed, non-functional, unable to act. So your brain makes choices. It compresses. It predicts. It simplifies a universe of staggering complexity into a manageable, navigable, useful hallucination. One that is coherent enough to walk through, recognizable enough to survive in, and convincing enough that you have spent your entire life assuming it was real. And for almost all of human history, nobody questioned it. Why would you? The hallucination works. It kept your ancestors alive on the savannah, helped them read faces, track prey, avoid predators. A brain that shows you what matters, not everything, is a brain that keeps you breathing. The question of whether what you see is real never mattered. What mattered was whether acting on it kept you alive. But here's what that means for you right now. Every argument you've ever had about what you witnessed, every time you were absolutely certain you remembered something correctly, every time you looked at a situation and thought you saw it clearly, you were trusting a system built not for truth, but for survival. A system that edits, predicts, fills in, and invents without ever asking your permission. The world you have been navigating your entire life is not the world as it is. It is the world as your brain decided you needed to see it. And there's no way out of that. No lens you can remove. No setting you can turn off. Even right now, reading this, knowing all of this, your brain is still doing it. Still predicting. Still curating. Still assembling a version of reality from the inside out and presenting it to you as if it arrived from the outside in. The philosopher Thomas Metzinger spent decades studying consciousness and concluded something quietly devastating. There is no point, he wrote, at which you make contact with the world as it actually is. All you ever have is the model. All you ever had was the model. So look at your hand again. The hand you see is real. The person holding it is real. But the experience of seeing it, the color, the texture, the depth, the sense of a world existing out there beyond your skin, that is something your brain built for you this morning. And yesterday, and every day of your life before that, you have never seen the real world. Nobody has. And somehow, that makes everything you've ever looked at a little more astonishing.